Good morning, David. Just checking that you can both hear me and see me.
Yeah, that's perfect, Joe. Yeah.
Great stuff. Well, good morning to you, and look, thanks to you, and good morning to all the participants as well. Very interesting discussion so far on this webinar, and look, I'm delighted to be here and to get this opportunity to say a few words about the work of local authorities. But obviously, I'm focusing very much on the work of Tipperary County Council, although any of my colleagues, I suppose, could come on here this morning in the southern region in particular and tell their story. I think it's a good story to tell. I suppose we have been fortunate in Tipperary in a number of ways. We've been fortunate, and a number of speakers have made reference to the community and individual leadership, and we've had that in quite amounts here in Tipperary. There's been a lot of community leadership and a lot of individuals who are very driven by this whole agenda. And you're going to hear a little bit more about that from Greg Allen of Community Power later on in the webinar. But also, I think, to acknowledge that we've had a very active, a very supportive Tipperary Energy Agency, which has worked very closely with Tipperary County Council and the community in bringing projects forward. And also, I think I'd have to acknowledge the role and attitude of the elected members of Tipperary County Council, because they have backed us when we need to go and make investment in the whole energy area. They have backed us, and they certainly haven't been slow to do that. Moving to the first slide, and I suppose the question about renewable energy and the role of the local authority and how we can support a transition to a low carbon economy. The theme of my presentation, I suppose there are four key themes there: the strategic planning and partnership. There's the whole question of the energy transition and leading by example. And I want to emphasize, when I talk about leading by example, I'm not just referring to Tipperary County Council, I'm referring to a broad range of community and agencies here in the county. And I want to look at the investment in infrastructure, give some examples of some investments we've made in Tipperary. And finally, just to speak a little bit about our ambition for the future, I'm focusing on two projects that we're involved with, which we hope will take us into the future in this particular area. Looking at Tipperary over the past 20 years, I suppose we did get into this space in energy renewable at an early stage, and we understood the benefits, I think, of making that transition. One point I want to make, and it's been made by Mari, and indeed I think by the Minister as well, is the importance of rural areas and the importance of rural area participation in this whole area. You know, we have well-known projects. They've gotten quite a lot of attention at local and national media: the Templederry Wind Farm and the Clough-Jordan Eco Village, and they have been developed in the heart of rural areas. And this is particularly important in a county like Tipperary, where there's almost a 50-50 split between people living in urban areas and rural areas. There's also the issue about the local economic benefit, apart from the environmental and climate action benefits, but the local economic benefits. And we've seen, for example, how the national retrofit program can deliver jobs. And we can also see how rural areas themselves are contributing towards the national energy and making their contribution towards achieving the targets. In terms of the first theme, the strategic planning and partnership, as I said, Tipperary has been in this area. In fact, we've been in this area for about 20 years. But back in 2014, there was a fairly significant shift in the whole restructuring of Tipperary in terms of local authority. Prior to 2014, there was, 10 local authorities in Tipperary. There's now a single local authority, and the most significant part of that was a merger between the North and South Tipperary County Councils. And I suppose that gave us an opportunity to look at the work that had been done prior to that and to spell out, if you like, a strategy for the future. The Renewable Energy Strategy, which was prepared in 2016, was actually the first county-wide planning document prepared by the new council, and I suppose it was a natural progression from us from the Covenant of Mayors. And we also saw it as setting out a statement in terms of our contribution towards renewable energy targets. The strategy itself, I think, built on some of the strengths of the county, a fairly strong, robust electricity infrastructure, skills and partnership that are in the county, and that grew over the number of years. And some of our partners include the Tipperary Energy Agency, the Limerick Institute of Technology, local communities, Community Power, and the Tipperary Energy Community Co-op. And indeed, there are other partners in some of our projects. I suppose another positive that developed for the county over the years was the community and local attitude to renewable projects and renewable energy projects and to infrastructure projects. And I'm not saying or referencing in any way that there's consensus at all times in relation to these projects, that there isn't. They do tend to get a lot of interest, but Bear in mind that the first, one of the largest, I think it was the largest at the time, wind farm that was constructed in the country in a site near Lisheen, and I'll speak about that later on, that's near Thurles. That was constructed nearly 20 years ago, and it has been there, and there has been, I think, a key part of that has been a community benefit scheme. So that did, I think, help towards the local attitude, and indeed our own attitude towards renewable energy projects. Tipperary, I suppose, is now the fourth largest producer of renewable energy in the country. We've over 300 wind turbines in the county and 15 commercial scale solar farms either permitted or going through the process of planning. In terms of the partnerships and following on from the renewable energy strategy, in 2017 we prepared a sustainable energy action plan, and that really spelled out a series of 32 actions around areas such as planning, agriculture, residential, commercial sector and local authority itself. And these are actions set to achieve our CO2 target commitment. The strategy itself and the action plan is overseen by a group known as Sustainable TIP, and that draws membership from Tipperary County Council, from Teagasc, from the LIT, the Tipperary Energy Agency, and a very vital role played by the North and South Tipperary development companies. And it provides, I suppose, apart from overseeing the various actions, it provides a very valuable forum for exchange of ideas and information. In terms of making the energy transition and leading by example, and again, emphasize it's about leading by example within the community as much as the local authority. And more recently, I suppose, Project Ireland 2040 and the Climate Action Plan have set the context for local authorities to lead in the area in terms of providing strategic direction through our planning processes. And one of the key areas of that is the county development plan itself. Here in Tipperary, we just commenced the review of our county development plan, and this is going to form a very, very large part of the plan itself, and indeed of the engagement and discussion in the plan. I think within the county, whether it's the community or the local authority, the Tipperary Energy Agency or indeed others, I think it's true to reflect that we are conscious of our role in leading by example. I mentioned already the support of the elected members, and we have set some ambitious targets locally, and hopefully our ambition will be matched by investment in achieving those targets. I also mentioned that we had moved into the renewable energy space about 20 years ago. There was an energy management committee set up between the former North and South Tipperary County Council, and that became known as the Climate Action and Energy Committee, which is in place nowadays under Tipperary County Council and working with all of our partners that I mentioned before. And within the local authority itself, the teams working internally, we have climate action. We'd like to think, I suppose, at the centre of all our planning processes, right across the various services we provide, such as roads, transportation, environmental, and so on. And the evidence base for all our work is provided through energy audits. Just in terms of investments and a few examples of investments, Mary mentioned about heat and the importance of heat. And one of the areas we looked at was heat and investment in renewable heat in particular. In terms of delivery to date, the council would have invested in 25 renewable energy infrastructure projects, and that's resulted in a 39% energy improvement. One of the areas we looked at, of course, was the renewable energy, the whole heat, and how we could improve on that. And the first natural area to look at was our leisure centres, our swimming pools, our gyms. They're all hungry for heat and all generate a very significant amount high demand for heat. And this was a key area, I suppose, in recording a significant difference in reliance and reducing our reliance on fossil fuel, and also generating some financial savings. We put an investment, and when I speak about our investments, all of them are co-funded, whether it's SEAI, whether it's department, whether it's Interreg, whatever EU, whatever source they come from. But we replaced fuel boilers with biomass in leisure centres in Nina, Thurles and Rossgrey, and 95% of the heat is now generated by renewable energy technologies, with about a 70% reduction in LPG and kerosene across the organisation. The photo in this slide is of the Nina Leisure Centre and Town Park, and that's one of our demonstrator areas. The reference is made to the heat demand mapping, and we accept there's a lot of work to do in that area, but our climate change committee has been looking at that in some of our main towns and to look at the opportunity for partnership in district heating. Staying with investment, looking at the investment in renewable electricity, and much has been mentioned about solar PV. Well, back in 2014, Tipperary County Council, working with the Tipperary Energy Agency, set about a project which involved the installation of over 800 PV solar panels across 9 local authority buildings, for example, our civic offices, fire stations, libraries, and leisure centres. Interestingly, at the time, I know things have moved on since, but at that time, that project alone increased Ireland's total solar PV capacity by 44%. The investment, over €326,000, 50% of that was grant aided through Better Energy Community. Project payback time was about 7 years, and building on this, we recently more than doubled our solar capacity, which leads me into our next example, which is investment in community development and energy generation. The community virtual power plant is an Interreg funded European project undertaken by Tipperary County Council, the Energy Agency, and Community Power. I suppose there were at least 2 objectives here. Firstly, to show how the community groups can set up their own community-based virtual power stations, and secondly, to raise the whole awareness. I'm not going to go too much further into this because a speaker coming after me, Greg Allen from Community Power, I think is going to speak a little bit more about that. So I might just defer that to Greg in relation to that. Just to mention the capital cost of the project, about €240,000, Interreg 60% and Tipperary County Council 40%. In terms of education and awareness and the need to work with the agriculture, we saw the figures that Mary put up there in terms of the various contributions by the various sectors, and agriculture is a huge contributor in terms of the overall debate here. But one of the needs that was highlighted by our elected members was the need for direct engagement with the agriculture sector, with farmers at a local level. And out of that came an idea of the Energy in Agriculture Conference. The inaugural conference was held in 2016, and it's hosted in Gurteen College, and it's a very appropriate location. It's a 3rd level agricultural college. It's well known for its innovation in energy, and it's also deployed itself a suite of renewable energy efficiency technologies. This was a partnership between the council, the Energy Agency, Teagasc IFA, Gurteen College, and others. And I think one of the key aspects of this, and one of the things making it a success, was the fact it wasn't just about conference mode in terms of speaking, a range of speakers, which was helpful, obviously, in terms of the expertise they brought, but also in terms of practical demonstrations of technologies, the opportunity for those attending to actually interact directly with people who were involved behind these technologies. That proved to be very successful. And in fact, it quickly became the largest energy event for farming community in the country. Glad to say that Gurteen College got a mention out of it. They were awarded the SEI award for the Energy Team of the Year in 2018. Obviously, 2020, that had to be postponed due to the COVID situation. We're looking at running this again this year, probably as a virtual event, but but it's certainly one that we see ourselves in for the long haul, and certainly I think it has, the feedback on the event has been good. In terms of research and training and looking at that, when you become involved in projects and when you become involved in trying to bring the whole renewable energy climate action into developing of plans, and that it does develop, I think, an expertise and an interest and a hunger within the organisation. And we've been involved in a number of research and training projects with our partners. One of them, just to mention one of them, was a pilot school training program, which was working with transition year students about developing energy audits in their own school. And we've also been involved, our own staff in planning here in the council, have co-authored research on community investment in large-scale renewable energy developments, and that paper was published as a reference document in the draft wind energy guidelines. Just turning now to 2 projects on our ambition for the future. This is a aerial photograph of the National Bioeconomy Campus at Leasheen. This was a former lead zinc mine owned by international company Vedanta. It closed in 2015. Obviously, loss of considerable number of jobs, and a task force was established to look at possible future uses for the site. The site itself is about 1,000 acres. It's a large site. You can see there a wind farm on that site. That was in place, it has to be said, before the closure. But the task force set about its business, and it really came across the whole area of bioeconomy and the opportunities of bioeconomy, bearing in mind this site was fully serviced in terms of infrastructure, in terms of roads, in terms of energy, in terms of water in particular. it was fully serviced for all of those. And the site itself was designated by the European Union as a model demonstrator site in 2016. It was fortunate, I suppose, in getting two significant announcements: the Agrichem Way project funded by the EU in 2017, and that was followed by an investment by Enterprise Ireland of over 4.6 million in the Irish Bioeconomy Foundation. One of the features, as you can see there from the photograph, of the campus is the presence of a 30-wind turbine. And this was in the national news, I suppose, last year. You're probably aware that Facebook has an agreement with Brookfield Energy for this wind farm and to deliver on its, as part of an international agreement, and to deliver on its commitments as well. And this relates to the data centre in Clonee in County Meath. Ireland, I suppose, has some very, very ambitious targets in renewable energy, and those have been referenced earlier in earlier presentations. But there is no doubt that sites like Lachine can make and can assist us to get towards those targets. Just nearing the end, and the second project, just in terms of looking to the future, we're looking at the development of a centre of excellence, building on the experience, I suppose, building on the knowledge we have. And this project is a project that's been submitted for URDF funding. Partners on it are ourselves, the Energy Agency, LIT, North Tipperary Development Company, Community Power, and Sika Hydro, which is a private company. Interestingly, I think just to link this back into the hosts of this conference, this project is identified in the Southern Regional Spatial and Economic Strategy as a specific objective, and it's hoped that this will bring together in a particular centre of excellence energy professionals and researchers in demonstrator building, and I suppose be a centre for innovation as well. And hopefully that's one that we can deliver through URDF support in the future. So I'm going to conclude with just briefly reminding ourselves what the Climate Action Plan said in relation to local authorities' contribution. Local authorities occupy a pivotal role in their respective communities and can act to demonstrate public sector leadership and climate action in their areas, as well as key mobilisers of action at a local and community level. And I think it's fair to say, obviously I've concentrated on Tipperary, but I think the local authority sector itself is very much up for this agenda and for making progress, for working with communities, for working with state agencies, and however we need to work with in order to achieve our national targets. And in terms of the wider local authority input, just refer you to a very, very good report that was published a year ago. It was published in January 2020 by the Local Government Management Agency. It's a profile of local government climate action in Ireland, and it has very specific reference there to renewable energy as well. That's available on the LGMA website if anyone's interested, but it gives you some details and facts and figures in relation to what the overall sector has been doing to date. So look, David, I'll conclude with that. And again, look, thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to say a few words and to make a contribution.